That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Comic Reviews. I'm Sid Part 2, and I have got a light week this week, but that's okay. After 2 weeks of hour-long videos, I'm sure this will be a little bit refreshing. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with Doctor Who, The Four Doctors, number 2. I think I'm a week behind on this. It's hard to tell. My comic shop is kind of terrible about poll lists, and they get kind of screwed over by, the trucks not bringing enough issues, so I think I might be a week back on this, but that's okay. I'll just continue to go like normal. In 1 week, you might get 2 issues of this. So anyway, this continues almost right where we left off. The Reapers showed up in the last story, and we get Gabby through her art, which I love the sections of Gabby's art in the 10th Doctor book. We get Gabby through her art, explaining how she thought doctors, how Tennant explained to her that there have been other versions of himself and how she thought they would interact and how that's not at all what's going on. So that's pretty funny. Because I talked about that last week, how just, who would you get along with the least but your past self? Because I know I was an asshole in high school, and I imagine you were too, if you're being perfectly honest with yourself. But anyway, so they're getting away from the Reapers, from the Christopher Eccleston era, and then they do the thing that the Doctor does when there's obviously a trap going on, which is to go spring the trap. So for a book called The Four Doctors, it is a little weird that there's still, 2 issues into a 5-issue series, and there's still only 3 Doctors. Like I talked about last time, I'm not sure if they're going to go ahead and go for the fuzzy animal. I'm not sure if they're going to have the War Doctor be the other Doctor in this, or if they're going to go ahead and use Eccleston, because I don't know. They already mentioned that they're using the same that Tennant uses the same TARDIS. I love every time the Doctor shows up with himself, he has to criticize the new guy's TARDIS. Great running gag through that series. So I just don't know if they're gonna use Eccleston, because they obviously bring the Reapers in. They make a lot of there's just a lot of references to Eccleston stuff here. Like they go run to the TARDIS when the Reapers show up, and they open the TARDIS and it's empty, just like it was in that episode of Eccleston's run. And then they mention, the Reapers in and of themselves, obviously right out of a monster out of Eccleston's era. And then just talking about his TARDIS and everything, it seems like they might be bordering on using the Ninth Doctor again. And having him be the surprise in the series. Because obviously everyone assumed it would be the War Doctor. But there's a line in here where it's something to the effect of, okay, what's different about all 3 of us opposed to all the other Doctors? We're all Doctors after the Time War. So obviously there's something with that. So I'm not sure. There's some really clever stuff. I don't talk about this often, but there's some very clever stuff with the way in which they're using speech bubbles. Since all 3 Doctors are kind of talking over each other, they've done some clever stuff with how they're putting it together. So, like, if you look at this speech bubble right here, it's the 3 of them standing in a room right as the Reapers are entering, and they're trying to decide, or they're all telling everyone what they should do. So we have one bubble where it says we need to, and that branches out into 3 others, 1 for each Doctor. I thought that was really crazy. I thought that was really clever, and it's crazy because they each have a completely different solution, so there's absolutely no consistency. So that was pretty clever. I thought the panel layout was pretty smart. This issue, I think, is written a lot better. I didn't find myself confused on anything, and this is the one where I thought I might have. Because, honestly, this is where it starts getting crazy. And it shows a lot of talent in the writer to be able to so distinctly represent each Doctor. Because, obviously you have the Doctor written very differently from Doctor to Doctor in episodes of the show. But here they have a very distinct voice for each version of the Doctor, which I was fairly impressed that they were able to do without the benefit of the actor portraying the character. So I was pretty impressed by that. There's a nice little quip about how Capaldi's TARDIS looks like the Master's TARDIS. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, it's still a pretty strong issue. Cool panel with 3 TARDISes on screen at one time. I enjoyed that. Anytime you get more than one TARDIS, it's nice. Let's see here, what else? There's not a ton to say. Right now, it's all just building up to just absolute craziness. There's a cool scene where you get each of the doctors and their respective companions in the TARDIS, in their own TARDIS at one time as they all go to the same place. And they each have a conversation. I love that, like, Clara and Capaldi's Doctor and Gabby and Tennant's Doctor both have these kind of like deep, heartfelt conversations to one extent or another. And then Smith and whatever his companion's name is, Smith's remark is, I think I might actually win the least silly doctor contest. And she goes, weirdly, yeah. I love that. And they're just sitting there drinking coffee as they're on their way. I thought that was pretty clever. I'm not really sure what era Matt Smith's Doctor is being written in, because, like, he has the TARDIS that he traveled in with Amy and Rory, not the one that he had in the last half of season 7. So I guess it's got to be during that time that they like broke up or whatever. Whatever works. And then we get the reveal of who our villains are for this book, and I'll give you a sec before I say it. Okay. The Vord, who I believe were the species that we saw in the last issue. So that I mean that seemed fairly obvious, but you couldn't be completely sure. These little comics in the back are always a lot of fun. So yeah, the Vord are the villain. They were the species who we saw the War Doctor working with in the first issue. But so far, I'm pretty impressed with this overall. It's been a pretty good book so far. Super enjoyable, super fun to see Capaldi work with the other 2 Doctors. One of these days, I would love a crossover to give us a Doctor that we haven't seen yet from the show, like a Doctor that's going to be. I thought that would have been so cool if they kind of did it in the 50th, but if you're going to do a crossover with the Doctor, it would be so crazy if he were to just meet a version of himself who we haven't seen yet. And so I think that's kind of fun in this, because if you're like me and you're only reading the 10th Doctor book, or say the 11th Doctor book, it's kind of fun to see Capaldi show up. Like, say you hadn't seen Series 8 of Doctor Who yet. It's kind of fun to see Capaldi show up in this. I don't know, I think that'd be a neat thing to see, is a new Doctor who hasn't had a season of his own yet. That could be a lot of fun. I don't think it'll ever happen, especially with how big a thing they've turned crossover Doctor stories, multiple Doctor stories, especially with how big they've turned that into. I don't think we'll ever get that. But it'd still be neat to see, and so you get kind of like a taste of what that might be like with this, which is fun. There's an advertisement about new 3rd Doctor audio adventures. I know a lot of the 2nd and the 1st Doctor's episodes were lost in a fire. I wonder if the 3rd Doctor's were as well, and maybe we're getting the audio from that, and maybe it's just someone doing his voice. I want Titan Comics, who's the publisher of these, I want them to release another Doctor Who book, because right now we have the 10th, 11th, and 12th Doctor books running, and I believe they just finished up a mini-series of 9th Doctor stories. So if they're going to continue with that idea of having 4 books out at one time after this finishes up, I think something would be really cool for them to do is release a a Doctor of the Month book kind of thing. Like, just take, or a classic Doctor's book. That could be a better way to look at it. Just new stories with the classic Doctor Who Doctors, and you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 over and over again, just alternating story arc to story arc, and you don't really deal with like big, plot threads that go through each book, or maybe you do that, but you only do it within that Doctor's story. So like, every 3 months, let's say you do 3-issue story arcs. Every 3 months we switch Doctors. So we do 3 issues with the first Doctor, 3 issues with the second Doctor, so on and so forth. I think that could be a lot of fun if we do classic Doctor book that just alternates between the classical Doctors month to month. I think that could be a lot of fun. But anyway, so that's this is a lot of fun though, so I do recommend picking it up overall. You just can't get enough of Doctor Who these days. Lando number 3. Lando Calrissian number 3. There's some good suspense in this. It's Lando and everyone realizing that, we stole Emperor Palpatine's ship. Well, shit. There's some cool fight scenes and stuff with these twins characters and some Imperial guards. And there's the bounty hunter that they set up in the second issue is getting closer to them. But there's some cool suspense though. There's a scene where we see the twins fighting the guards, and they're like both on the ground and they look at each other like, oh god, we're about to die. And then when we next see them, it's outside the room that they've been fighting in, as Lando and this other character show up to the door, and they're like, you hear anything? No. So maybe the fight's over. Maybe. Isn't this normally when you cut the losses and run for the escape pods? Real nice, Corin. The twins or the guards. 50-50. Could be worse. And they open the door, and the twins ended up winning, which just that's a really cool suspense building scene. And Lando saves his friend from the last issue. And it looks like the Imperial, they're setting up something where it looks like the most valuable thing on the Emperor's ship is all these Sith artifacts. The Sith have always been a really weird thing in the Star Wars universe, and so it'll be good to get some consistency from them now. But it appears that they have very little left. Like there's, Corin here describes the artifacts as literally priceless. So it's just kind of all building to a shitstorm in the best way possible. Just everything keeps going kind of sort of wrong, but ends up working out, which is really great stuff for this heist style storytelling that they're doing with Lando. And that's just a lot of fun to read. Yeah, I'm definitely adding this to my list along with the Darth Vader book. It's a lot of fun. And it's a lot of fun, really high stakes stuff where everything that could possibly go wrong seems to be going wrong left and right. So that's always fun to read. Anyway, not much else to say about this. I think it's good. Deathstroke number 9. If you're a really big fan of just really cool superhero or supervillain fights, this is probably a good book for you to pick up. I imagine that's kind of like the fun of it, is you get to see some really cool fights in it with Deathstroke involved. I just don't know how well villain books work. And Deathstroke clearly does kind of straddle that line between villain and anti-hero, but I don't know, it's just because what you always have to do is, with villain books, is just kind of create a bigger threat than them and make them the hero in it. And I don't know, something about that just doesn't work for me. Maybe if this were more... if this were more along the lines of like a contract book, that could work. And I guess that maybe it started out that way, but just what it's turned into, maybe I jumped on at the wrong time, or I don't know. It says the next issue's the conclusion. I'll probably pick that up, but I don't imagine I'll be picking up much more of this. It's just okay. I'm not a huge Deathstroke fan to begin with or anything. There's a cool Superman fight. I'm not going to deny that. Superman versus, Deathstroke with this magical sword is pretty neat, but I don't know. It's just not my thing, I guess. So, like, what happens is Wonder Woman gets taken out by this monster Titan guy. Like, knocked out, rather. And as Deathstroke goes to go help her, Superman rushes in at the last second and starts beating the crap out of him because he assumes that Deathstroke is responsible for everything that's happening. And so Superman says, "What have you done to this island, Deathstroke? What destruction have you caused now?" And Deathstroke says, "You think I have time to bring you up to speed?" And Superman says, "Make the time, or you and I are going to have a problem. My fight's not with you, Superman, unless you want it to be." And then they just rush at each other and start fighting, and I'm just like... And then they waste half the issue fighting, which, I mean, that's the point. It's supposed to be a cool fight scene, and it is. But they waste half the issue fighting, and then Wonder Woman has to come and break up the fight so that they can go deal with the real threat. And then suddenly the real threat comes back just at the right time. I just don't really care for that kind of writing. Like, it's very formulaic. It's very patterned. And so it's just really not doing it for me. So I'm not particularly enjoying this book. Deathstroke's a character who I've always wanted to like more than I do. I thought Deathstroke was always very cool, but ultimately I'm just like, he's alright. He always looks really cool, he always does some cool stuff, but I've just never read anything with Deathstroke that really wowed me. I enjoyed his stuff at the beginning of New 52, but it's just okay to me. The next issue could turn it around, maybe, but honestly, I don't think it's really for me. That, and on top, just Tony Daniel's the one writing it, so I just don't think this is my bag. I don't really have much else to say about it. It's just okay. Sorry. And then trade talk this week. Neil Gaiman's Sandman Worlds End. I actually don't have a ton to say about this. I thought it was good. It's always good. It's always great, for that matter. But basically what's going on here is you have a guy who is driving late at night. He's suddenly in a snowstorm in the middle of June, and he sees some kind of weird animal in the middle of the road and swerves his car and runs into a tree. And he and this girl that he'd been driving with, they go into an inn that's nearby. Just like an old-fashioned, like, inn, I-N-N. And there are just a bunch of people there, and they're all there because of a storm, and they all start telling stories to pass the time. So it's basically Canterbury Tales. Once again, Sandman is literature. Like, it is almost essentially the Canterbury Tales, where everyone's just got a story to tell, and they all tell their story, and it's all just meant to pass the time while they wait to get to their inevitable goal. And there's a lot of stuff still in here about death, but that's not really the focus this time. There's some interesting stuff here and there. There's some just kind of fun, neat stories. One of my favorite characters from this series, Rob Hadling, or Gadling. There we go, Gadling. Rob Gadling makes an appearance, which is kind of fun to see. He's in a whole issue. There's a cool story about immortality, little Indian myth thing that I really liked. I'll read you that just for shits and grins, if you don't mind. There's a story about a city dreaming, and the fear of what would happen if a city were to wake up. That was really cool. There's some political intrigue and stuff with the fairy people come back. And Gaiman must really have a love for that particular kind of mythology, because he brings them in a lot, which is kind of neat. Where is it? Okay, I'm on the story, and I just have to find the story within. That's the other funny thing, is there are a lot of stories within stories in this, so that was kind of cool. Alright. Once there was a king who had a wife whom he loved more than life itself. More than life itself. This is no pretty turn of phrase. Listen. One day there came an holy man to the palace. He was as thin as a scarecrow, his beard white as pearl, his skin blackened and gnarled like burnt wood by the sun. He demanded to see the king. The guards refused him entry, whereupon he took a knife from his loincloth, and, with one hard swipe, he cut off his left hand at the wrist. They were most astonished by this action, more so when they realized there was no blood issuing from the wound. The holy man picked up his hand, which was crawling around the dust, scuttling and skirting like a scorpion, and fastened it once more to his wrist with a mystic gesture. Magically, he was whole again. Now, he said, take me to your king. And they did. Light of the gods on earth, he began. I am, as you can see, a holy man, and I have, through trials undreamed of, and through alchemy and through prayer, obtained for myself this fruit. In appearance, it partakes of both the fig and the apple. It is, however, the fruit of life, and whoever eats of it shall live forever. So why do you not eat of it? Asked the king, who is nobody's fool but his own. For 3 reasons. Firstly, I'm an old man. Immortality should be given to the young and those in good health. Secondly, I desire to remain upon the chimeric wheel of death and rebirth on my path to eventual rewards far greater than living forever. And thirdly, I am too scared to taste of it. How can you assure me, asked the king, that this is not poisonous, that you are not tricking me? The old man ordered a mongoose brought to him, and fed it with his hands a tiniest slice of the fruit. Then he ordered a fire kindled, and the animal tossed it into the furnace. In time the fire burned down, and the king saw the mongoose questing about inside, unharmed by the flames. Then the king knew that the man was telling him the truth, and he took the fruit with thanks. He ordered that gold be brought for the holy man, but the holy man refused it and went on his way. The prince pondered the gift of immortality. Now he had a wife whom he loved, as I said, more than life itself, for he decided that this wife should receive the gift of the fruit, and not him. That night he suited deed to word, and gave his wife the fruit of life. Alas, his wife was as unfaithful as any woman, and she had a lover, who was a captain of the palace guard, and that night, because she loved him, she gave her captain the fruit of life. There was a prostitute in the town, not a raggedy arse prostitute, but a courtisante, like they had in those days, with whom the captain was infatuated, and whose favors he bought with gems and gold and silver that he got from the queen, and to her he brought the fruit untouched. She was very beautiful, but she was uncertain enough of the fruit and of its provenance, and and desirous enough of earthly reward to hie herself to the palace. She offered the fruit to the king. He took it from her, and once she had told him how she had obtained it, ordered her to be rewarded. Then he had the queen and her lover brought to him, and he had them both killed, without torture though, for he had loved her more than life itself. He dressed himself in clothes of the poorest beggar in his realm, and making his brother king in his stead, he left the palace. He ate the fruit and walked out of the city into the desert, never to be seen again. So that's a really good story, and then we're of course revealed that the guy that's telling the story, who is an Indian gentleman, is of course the king that ate the fruit, and he's good friends with Gadling that had, they'd interacted over the centuries. Anyway, the ship in that story is kind of caught in doldrums, and then we get this amazing splash page as the doldrums end. And that was really cool. But there's not a ton to really say about this issue. It's got some underlying themes and stuff to it, but nothing super deep or anything like that. It's more just about the importance of stories and how you can truly be wrapped up in a story. So I don't have much to say about that. Yeah, we get 3 stories within one story in this other issue. It's just the importance of stories, and I'm sitting here talking about stories. I told you a story, so that's the importance of stories. How you can lose yourself in a story. There's some great descriptions about death in this that I really love, but ultimately I don't have much to say about this. It's damn good. But it is essentially Canterbury Tales. It's people telling stories to pass time while they're on their way somewhere. While they're at the inn at World's End. Really good, really beautiful stuff though. Did get choked up once or twice. I thought it was, it's amazing, like all of Sandman has been thus far. So seriously, if you haven't read Sandman, this is something where you don't really need to... This might be a good jumping on point for Sandman, or just something to pick up if you're kind of unsure about Sandman and you don't really want to worry about the rest of the continuity or who's this and how everyone's related to each other. You can just pick this up. Everything in this reads perfectly well on its own, and it gives you a taste of the quality of writing and the variety of worlds and characters that you'll meet. I doubt any of these characters are going to be coming back, except for Gadling and maybe the Indian King as well. But if they do, I'd certainly be happy to see them. But their story for now is perfectly satisfied. So yeah, if you just want like something that's not super deep, you can pick this up, and it's just really interesting, really fascinating stories that people are telling. And stories within stories within stories and stuff like that. So give it a shot. It's Sandman. It's amazing. Just believe me. Anyway, that'll do it for this week's comic reviews. Much shorter episode this week. I'm sure that's a nice little breather for everyone. It certainly is for me. Anyway, until next time, I'm Zidbar2. Please leave your comments with suggestions for comics to pick up or trades to pick up in the comments below. I've gotten a couple things that I'll add to my list, but right now I want to work my way through the rest of Sandman since I think there are only 2 or 3 volumes left. But everyone, thank you very much for listening. I will see you next time.